I have two quick announcements. The first is there's interpretation services. We have Sage, who is upstage. Oh, there she is. She has devices for folks who'd like to hear the presentations in Spanish. And then the second is that for folks who did park in the convention center parking garage, there will be no cost to that. We're going to open the gates afterwards, and folks can just leave without having to get a ticket validated or anything. So as folks make their way to the seat before we begin the official programming, just a few reminders. Again, we have interpretation services up here where you can grab a device if you'd like to hear the presentations in Spanish. We will have two parts of this event tonight. The first part is information and presentations, which will be about 40 minutes, followed by table discussions where there'll be a facilitator and folks will be taking notes. So as folks make their way to their seats, just remember your table numbers. They should be written on your name tags. So the table numbers is where you will go after the presentations finish. Do you want to sit? Yeah. I think we have one. All right. Well, thanks for joining. I'm Henry Hammond-Paul. I'm the Director of Community Safety, Community Health and Safety for the City of Santa Fe. Happy to introduce City Manager Mark Scott to give the welcome, and then we'll jump into presentations.
Good evening. Good evening, brave people. You've come out to participate in something that we haven't tried before. And we're looking forward to having this opportunity for what we're calling a community dialogue. It gives us a chance to spend the first part of our meeting talking a little bit about what the city is doing in the way of the homelessness programs that we've got working, including the micro-community concept that is demonstrated by the unit over here. It will also give us a chance after we get done doing some informational, sharing some informational news with you. We will then break up and have everybody work at these tables in the back. We'll have each of you join a table where we're going to have some staff people who are going to do some facilitation and also some note-taking. Now, I want to say that these staff people that are doing this, these are not professional facilitators. These are people who work with the city, who have agreed to come out and help us with this. And I very much appreciate the fact that we have something like 20 or 25 facilitators and about that many more note takers who have agreed to participate with us tonight. And I want to thank each and every one of them for coming out to do that. Mostly, I want to acknowledge all of you because this meeting is really our opportunity to talk to you. I wanted to draw a distinction here. This is not, as you know, I think, this is not a city council meeting. And we do have city councilors and the mayor here in the room with us. And please don't think that they're shy or anything like that. They're not. They're all here, or many of them are here. And they would love to participate, I'm sure, except that this is not a notice city council meeting. So they're actually limited in how they can participate. They can't talk to the whole group under the law, but they can talk to you one-on-one around the room. They can listen in at the tables as you're having your discussions, and they're certainly here to be part of this. When we're all done, our intention is to record the input that you provide us at the tables. And we're going to record that in notes and we're going to write those notes up and make them available publicly. We'll make them available to the governing body. We'll make them available to all of you. If you want to provide us additional written information, you can do that. All of this is going to be very public. So we appreciate that you're willing to come and try out this different concept. You know, a lot of people have said to us, well, why don't we just do a big town hall meeting? Well, we can, and if, in fact, if you want to, after we're done with all this, if the governing body asks us to, we will. We will do whatever we need to do to give our public the opportunity to share with us what your hopes are, what your concerns are, what your solutions are. We're interested in receiving all of that input. Tonight is just one effort in that endeavor, and we hope that you will feel like it was worthwhile. I do think that the first part of this meeting, the first 45 minutes, where we're going to talk to you about the whole micro-community concept, we're going to have some examples of other places that have used that concept. We're going to have some speakers who have participated in creating and serving micro-communities, and we think that'll be useful for everyone. So I think what we're doing, I think we would all agree, what we're doing matters. We're trying to serve a part of our community that is in great need, and I think we all appreciate. I don't think anybody that comes up to speak to say, I'm worried about the impacts on my neighborhood, I don't think that means you don't care about other human beings. I believe you do care about other human beings, and I will always believe that as my first belief. But we also want to make sure that we do it in such a ways that we enhance neighborhoods that are already existent. And that's why we need your input. We need to hear from you, what is it we can do to make this micro-community concept work? We know it works, but it needs to also work for the people who are already here. So that's why we're here tonight, to listen to all of that. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your being willing to be part of this experiment on a little different way of conducting business, and we look forward to listening to you tonight. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Henry Hammond Paul, Director of Community Health and Safety for the city. A big part of my job is leading the staff's work on our homelessness programming. My goal tonight is to give a quick overview of some of the work that we do. I'm going to start big picture and then explain how micro-communities fits into the broader picture of how the city is working to address some of the conditions around homelessness. So why are we having this conversation? And I try and use data and numbers to the best of my possibility to paint this picture. Santa Fe has something called a by name list, which is basically the idea of it's a lot easier to wrap your head around a problem if you can count it and understand that it's names of individuals, it's people who are experiencing things, as opposed to a monolithic blob of the homeless. So we have a by name list that has around 400 individuals on it. There's many shelter providers in the room tonight as well, and we have about 280 shelter beds in our city. So that basic arithmetic leaves us at about a deficit of 120 beds, and that's on the low end. A recent study by the New Mexico Department of Health came out that estimates that by-name lists or point-in-time counts are about 2 to 4 times undercounting the real numbers. So this hopefully gives a picture of the breadth of the challenge that we experience, and it's a collective challenge. Counting homelessness is complex. There's a lot of different methodologies. Every city, every county, every state uses something called a point-in-time count. It's a federally required way of counting homelessness. In effect, you count every person who's homeless, either street homeless or in a shelter, on a single night, and everybody in the country does that at the same time. There's very clear reasons why that's not a great way to do this. Then there's more nuanced ways of counting homelessness. The public schools are required by federal law to also count homelessness, and in Santa Fe, in 2024, they reported 741 homeless students. It is a much broader definition of homelessness. This includes people who are housing insecure, sleeping in their cars, maybe folks who've been kicked out of their home by their parents because they got pregnant and are in with a cousin for 3 days until they don't know where they're going next. So it's a much broader definition. And this number, 741, is a 7% increase year over year from 2023 and an 11% increase from 2022. So what is the city doing to try and tackle this seismic problem? We have a homelessness action plan that the city put out in October of 2024, and it really breaks a set of activities into 6 distinct areas, addressing really critical parts of our system. The first and foremost is acknowledging that safety, security, and stability are really essential conditions that need to be established in our community. We can walk and chew gum. We can acknowledge that there are impacts on our neighborhoods while at the same time implementing humane and dignified challenges, implementing dignified solutions to some of these challenges. But acknowledging and addressing the safety and security concerns of residents and businesses and neighborhoods is critical. And some of the activities, this is in detail on the city's website. Some of the activities that are included in this bucket include things like deploying community-based public safety teams. We have a team that's doing a soft launch on July 14th. Many of you probably heard about this a few weeks ago. That organization, Urban Alchemy, has a community-based public safety program that will be launching on July 14th. They have 20 people that they've been training starting today. So this work is underway. Additionally, we are working to expand non-congregate shelter options. The difference between congregate and non-congregate is that in congregate shelter situations, folks all are in the same space. They don't have private space necessarily. It's a little bit more of a transient experience. Non-congregate people have a door that they can shut, a place to keep their belongings. We need everything we can get in Santa Fe. As I mentioned, we're at a deficit of 120 beds, so it's not one or the other, but we want to move towards more non-congregate options because they allow people to store their belongings places. It allows people to stabilize in a private environment better. We also need to improve our outreach and navigation services. Again, a set of activities that the city is investing in is how do you engage people who are becoming homeless or who are right on the precipice of experiencing homelessness, and how do we get them into better environments and more stable environments? We are also trying to increase our day services work, making sure that folks have a place to go throughout the day. A big symptom of street homelessness is people congregating, and that's something that many members of our community are asking to see addressed. But a very simple way to do that is give people a place to be. So we are working to establish day service centers across the city. These last 2 buckets, improving coordination and data and policy and advocacy, are more on the kind of inner workings of how government can and should work efficiently. Coordination is critical to make sure that we're aligning resources. Typically, you see a lot of different organizations trying to do the same thing and somewhat competing for resources as opposed to moving in the same direction and sharing resources. And then data policy and advocacy. I say this, and I know we have some city councilors in the room. If we want government to work well for our city, we have to staff it the right way. We, until a few weeks ago, only had 1 full-time position in the city working on homelessness. In fiscal year 26, we're gonna be growing that team to have 4 full-time positions to really answer the public's cries for address this challenge. And by staffing we can actually meaningfully do that work well. So those are the action areas. But really what it boils down to is we are trying to address challenges along what's called the housing continuum. And to do that, we need to do three things. We need to prevent people from becoming homeless. We need to help people who are actively homeless achieve shelter and stabilization. And then once people are sheltered, we need to move them from that active homelessness into permanent housing. That's the pathway. And the housing continuum looks something like this: unsheltered homelessness, emergency shelter, transitional housing, supportive housing, affordable housing, and then market rate rentals and home ownership. This is not something we can achieve overnight. I think having any conversation about homelessness without acknowledging the fact that Santa Fe has a critical shortage of affordable housing and just a major housing crunch in general doesn't do justice to the conversation. And housing is always the goal. A critical piece of that continuum, though, is what's called transitional housing. And this is where the conversation about micro-communities comes in. So when folks are moving through this continuum, the goal is, and we always have to say focus on outcomes and goals, the goal is to get people housed and stable and ultimately put them in a place, if they can be, self-sufficient. Transitional housing is a great bridge between being in a state of crisis and ultimately moving towards a state of stability. And that's where micro-communities fit in. So put very simply, micro-communities work. And there's a lot of different ways that you might have heard about what these things are called: tiny home communities, micro-communities, pallet homes, pallet shelters. And effectively what micro-communities are contained communities, safe, stable, and supportive environments for people experiencing homelessness and working to transition towards housing. They're structured, they have on-site services, they're non-congregate, which I think is a really critical component. When you just think about the nature of what we understand as homeless, a symptom of homelessness is folks dragging a lot of stuff around. That's actually a function of the fact that people don't have a place to store their stuff. So by working with people to have a place where they can close their door, store their belongings, have some peace and quiet, rest, you actually mitigate some of these challenges that many folks identify as being front and center of what street homelessness looks like. There's professional staff, and you'll hear from some of them tonight. We have one pilot micro-community in our city right now. You're going to hear from them about how that community has worked so far. And these aren't managed encampments. They're not tent cities. They're purpose-built, and they really do focus on outcomes. Pets are welcome. Santa Fe loves our pets. Everybody should have a pet if they want one. And this is a place where people can have pets and keep them safe. And that's another critical function of these is give people access to the things that many folks want in their lives. So not only do we know they work nationally, and we have a renowned national expert who's going to talk in a little bit about some of the national best practices. We know they work nationally. Turns out they also work well in Santa Fe. We have a pilot community that you're going to hear from the folks who operate that in a little bit. And again, I want to always come back to outcomes because that's the most important thing. After 1 year, this pilot community has 10 units. After 1 year, 72% of residents at that micro-community, out of 34 residents total, I think these numbers have changed since I last got the data, there have been more residents, but 72% of them have either moved into permanent housing or have a voucher in hand to move into housing. And that's an astounding statistic compared to national statistics. It is a critical component of these that they are part of a community, and that's part of what we're going to be talking about tonight when we go to the table discussions, answering questions about how can a community like this be a good neighbor to your community? How can you be a good neighbor to these communities? And one of these kind of mechanisms that the city has, and is again a national best practice, is something called good neighbor agreements, negotiating a set of terms with between the providers, the city, the neighbors, about what are the expectations, how do we raise challenges that we're having, and things like that. The city is also accountable here, and we have our land use team here. The city is putting forward a land use policy that kind of sets boundaries and conditions about how these are going to be implemented across our city. They're going to be defined under the city code. They need to be permitted with conditions for location, scale, community. So it's not like you're going to just see them popping up without a set of boundaries and conditions about how they are supposed to be designed. There are also going to be design standards, maximum occupancy, how far away they should be from other units, whether they're going to be ADA compliant or not. And it is, again, really important to note that there is always 24/7 management on site. At the end, I'm just going to share a couple pictures. You see what we have here. I think the biggest question on the table is, we know these things work. That I think, folks are welcome to investigate the research, do their own research, but empirically, we know that these achieve good outcomes for folks. The question is, how can we make them work as well as possible in Santa Fe? And I think this is where we want to tap into the creative culture and the creative history that we have here, and think about what can one of these communities look like here that will make it feel and be part of our city. So how can we make them work best for Santa Fe is the question that we can all try and ask ourselves. And with that, I'm going to invite Janelle Bohannon, who's a director at the Lifelink, to speak for a few minutes.
Okay. 2 things you need to know about me. I hate public speaking. So this is not in my comfort zone whatsoever. Another thing is, I like to include that I'm a native Santa Fean, so this project is near and dear to my heart to serve our community. Okay, this is a snapshot of what we have going on. Sorry, I don't want to hear myself. Okay, a little background information. The Lifelink has been here in Santa Fe since 1987, and ironically, it started as a women and children's shelter. What they saw as they were working it is that the need for behavioral health support, as well as substance use treatment, was pretty prevalent, and so they developed that. The agency grew to become a full behavioral health agency and provides the following services. We offer comprehensive community support services, or CCSS, individual and group therapy, intensive outpatient services for substance use, medication-assisted treatment, psychiatry and medication management, human trafficking aftercare, psychosocial rehabilitation, or PSR, which is our clubhouse, as well as outreach. I'm the director of outreach, so let me tell you a little bit about that. So, outreach services encompasses the service of trying to build rapport and get anyone on the street or potentially facing homelessness into supportive services. This includes PATH, which is a SAMHSA-funded street outreach program, city and county navigation. Our county navigation specifically works with folks coming out of incarceration to try to tie them into services. The Rise House, which is another transitional house we run, and that's specifically for people coming out of incarceration, street outreach, and as well as the micro communities. So, to share a little bit about how we ended up here, is I ran a 30-room hotel program during COVID when the congregate shelters had to go to 50% occupancy. During that time, we took a different approach, and we have the service-driven emergency shelter. And it only ran for 9 months, and during those 9 months, we housed 29 individuals and families. The Arroyo Chamizo micro-community, again, service-based, they have to engage with LifeLink staff on a regular basis to receive the support around goals such as housing and employment. Upon entry, everyone must develop a crisis plan and service plan, as well as an individualized housing plan. We provide meals 2 times a day, lunch and dinner. Our weekday meals are actually provided by our clubhouse or our PSR program. And so it's like a full circle that previously unhoused clients are providing these meals for us, as well as What the Truck, and that's a huge partnership of ours, and Victoria Brunetti provide our weekend meals for little to no cost. We do conduct room checks once a week to ensure that the clutter is minimal and that people can access their emergency hatches safely. We provide the 24/7 security on site. So we have security staff that is trained in trauma-informed care, as well as de-escalation and crisis intervention, as well as our on-site staff, which is a navigator and a site coordinator. And then we also provide referrals into recovery services. And one of the things that sets us apart is that we also provide almost like a supportive employment, because we allow people to work for money there on the site. Okay, this is the fun behind the scenes work that I actually thrive in, not the public speaking realm. So one of the things that we conduct monthly is a PCL-5, which is a self-report used to assess the presence and severity of post-traumatic stress symptoms, as well as a DLA-20, which is an assessment tool administered by my staff and myself, where we evaluate a client's ability to perform daily living activities. It focuses on 20 key areas affected by mental health or a disability. So these are your 20 DLA categories. I'm not going to read them off. You guys can read them. But this assessment is helping us guide our clients in helping them identify goals and get them ready for permanent housing. So what we've found so far, and this has only been a year and 2 months, 3 months, is that 24% of our longer-term clients have seen an improvement in their PCL-5 scores, which means that their symptoms of PTSD while at the site, which symptoms could include nightmares, hypervigilance, negative beliefs about oneself, taking blame, sleep issues, they have decreased. As well as 27% of our longer-term clients have shown improvement in their daily living skills. And then we conducted our first client satisfaction survey in May, and we found that 88% enjoy the services that they are provided. 75% report that they are better able to take care of their emotional, physical, and mental needs. And 75% agree that they are better able to manage their symptoms. Okay, this is a lot of data. Sorry, we got a little data happy. One of the things that I think is really impressive is this pie chart, because majority of our people have an average of 68.41 months of homelessness. So these people are the ones that we see on the streets that have forgotten, and they're in this constant state of survival. And so it's hard to think about taking care of your hygiene. It's hard to think about receiving services, making sure you're fed, because they're in this constant state of survival. So we have 81% of our folks have been chronically homeless, as well as 71% with prior incarceration histories, 37% with domestic violence, and then 45% of our clients are currently LifeLink clients, and that's over the total of 38. So as Henry said, our data has changed since we last reported, but we have served 38 individuals. 10 have moved into housing. 1 currently has a housing voucher in hand and just needs to find placement. 4 others currently qualify for permanent supportive housing and are waitlisted through the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness. 6 are currently on the wait list for a linkages program, which is permanent supportive housing funded by the state. 5 are on Section 8 through Santa Fe County, and 5 have completed some sort of recovery treatment, either a detox or a 30-day recovery. These are improvements that we would like to see at the site, specifically a commercial grade kitchen so they can also work on their daily living skills through cooking. a community room, and I know the church is working on this. This is good job. With 24/7 access, supportive employment services, and additional activities for the clients. And then we're also working to try and develop a relationship to have weekly healthcare check-ins. As you all know or may not know, that as of 2024, we are selected to be the operator for the next micro-community. We're hoping to build upon existing services and implement more comprehensive model that includes supportive employment, daily living skills, and a diverse range of recreational activities and groups. We'll continue to offer housing support, access to housing vouchers, subject to eligibility. Sorry, I didn't write this. And then one of our goals for the next site is to integrate peer support from individuals with lived experience of homelessness and recovery from addiction, which can significantly improve outcomes for our users by building trust, empowering recovery, and shaping more effective services. One of the things that we do every month is we do have a monthly Zoom meeting where we provide community updates on what's going on. So this little QR code here is the link to our Zoom, and you are all more than welcome to join our Zoom. I think it's every third Wednesday of the month from 6 to 7. We've had one lovely visitor in the last few months, but we're there every month ready to provide you with any sort of updates or answer any sort of questions. And so it's a big part of what we do as part of our Good Neighbor Agreement and our engagement with our community. And that's it. I'm done. I survived. Cool beans.
Before I invite our next and last speaker up, we have a short video that we're going to share about the micro-community at Arroyo Chamizo. So
it was back in, I think, 2023, at the end of the year. The pastor and a couple of people on the church council attended town hall meetings that the city held, and in one of those meetings they had one of the pallet shelters there on display, and they were talking about how they wanted to start this program in Santa Fe and they were looking for site hosts. And the pastor and another person that was there, they looked at each other and said, hey, we can do this. We can put some of these shelters on our property. And then from there, it just, was working with the city and volunteers. And here we are today. Yeah.
My name is Enrique Gallion. I've been here like a year now. Because they helped me a lot. They helped me with my birth certificate, and I like it here because when I was in the streets last year, and they told me this place, and it helps me a lot because it helps me to. I'm getting an RV, and I'm getting they help me with the dentist and housing and everything. So it's a good program. I like it.
My name is Robert Olivas. I've been here for 2 months, or maybe a little over 2 months. It's helped me a lot. It's got me off of the streets. I don't have to go out and do whatever on the streets. I always have a place to come to, to sleep if I, and this is where I live. It's like home right now, It's not hard to get into the community. I would actually refer somebody to it,
My name is Nicholas Tharp. I work for the LifeLink. I am a site coordinator for the Arroyo Chamizo micro-community, safe outdoor space. I have a history of working in substance abuse counseling, detox, inpatient. I come with the experience of just all around mental health and substance abuse services. What we do here is we shelter folks that just have a lot of difficulty around other types of shelters for multitude of reasons. We're a low barrier shelter.
My name is Raquel Baca-Thompson, and I'm the site coordinator at the micro-community at Arroyo Chamizo. So I'm the liaison between the host, which is Christ Lutheran Church, and the LifeLink. The people that are staying here have access to our meeting spaces where they're able to have meals. We've also been able to build them a laundry room, so they're able to do laundry here. We also have a dog park that we've built for them. So of course they're able to bring their four-legged friends along with them.
It's really, really good. Everybody's nice. They do everything to help people out if they need it, you know. Whatever people need, or anybody that needs something, they help them out, you know. It's a really nice place. And I was on the street for a little while out there, you know. And I mean, a little time and everything's looking good, you know.
With that, I'd like to, well, first thank the communications team who put that video together. And second, welcome our final guest up to talk, Roseanne Haggerty, who is the president and chief executive officer of Community Solutions. She's an internationally recognized leader in developing innovative strategies to end homelessness and strengthen communities. Community Solutions assists communities throughout the U.S. And internationally in solving complex housing problems facing their most vulnerable residents. She has also founded Common Ground Community, a pioneer in the design and development of supportive housing and research best practices that end homelessness. I will also note that Community Solutions has been a critical component of the work that happens here in Santa Fe. They were instrumental in helping fund a handful of projects to support our community, including the purchasing of Santa Fe Suites and a handful of other really important projects to move this work along. So thank you for being here, Roseanne.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to join you. I was thinking earlier about my first visit to Santa Fe to meet with folks working on homelessness, and my impressions of not just the beauty and the culture and the rich history of the city, but how neighborly and engaged people were. Two stories, I think. At least 3 people, as I was visiting different parts of the city, said something to the effect that there are more volunteers per capita in Santa Fe than anywhere else. We love our city. And then going with an outreach worker to one of the arroyos and him kind of tugging on my arm saying, I went to high school with him. And just this sense of that it's personal, you know, that folks here have a very strong sense of the common good. And so it's a real joy to be here, really, and I'm so moved that so many people came out for this important conversation. So just a little bit about the work that the organization I lead, Community Solutions, does. As Henry mentioned, we work with, it's about 140 communities around the country who have really been grappling with this issue and understanding that a few things have to happen differently because the status quo approach just hasn't been working. That across communities, organizations, government need to work together in a much more coordinated, focused, outcome-oriented way. That we have to take the anonymity out of homelessness. We're not going to be able to solve a problem unless we can get down to the person level and figure out what are the barriers for this individual or this family and just make it easier to avoid homelessness in the first place, but also to move out of homelessness. And then the other part of it, of course, is as much as there's coordination and that focus on the person and the outcome that is at the center of communities' work that's necessary, there needs to be not just the right amount of housing, but the right variety of housing. And before Community Solutions, before this national work and this kind of network building and helping communities form teams and put the data together they need and really work toward outcomes that are collective, not just one program versus another, we had another organization that I started called Common Ground that Henry often also mentioned. And our specific work there back in the day in New York City was building permanent supportive housing. And we built about 4,000 units. And by building, I mean also buying and renovating old hotels and old single-room occupancy hotels and creating permanent housing with leases and services on site for individuals who needed those supports. But we learned along the way that we just could not build quickly enough to make a dent in homelessness. Even in our own neighborhood at that point, most of our buildings were in Manhattan. And so that prompted us to really think about like what else is needed. And one of the smartest things that we did was we just said, we need to ask people living on the street about like what they need and how do we accelerate the process of getting people out of homelessness. And we ended up having, I remember, weird number, 127 different, in-depth interviews with folks living on the street, where we sort of asked the question, not like, what do you need only, but we asked, what kind of housing would make it possible for you to make progress as we can't build enough, of these apartments, and they're complicated to finance. And almost to a person, we heard the same thing. We heard, we are just looking for something that is private, safe, clean, that we can get services if we need them, that we can get on our feet before, as we get our next move sorted out. Consistently, we heard that, and my colleagues and I were just looking at each other saying, this is so basic. Why can't we do that? We only have a model for financing housing that is, tax credits and lots of capital and takes a long time and has to go through all of these different design and review processes. How come we can't do something that is that much more immediate and that gets people into a place that's private, safe, clean, and gives them a chance to actually pull their lives back together and begin to look for permanent supportive housing or whatever housing they require? And so it took us a little while, but we kind of did the high-rise city version of the pallet shelter. We were able to buy an old, called a cubicle hotel on the Bowery in New York City, and we turned it into 146 units that look a lot like that. It's almost eerie, but so a vertical version of the micro community that you're talking about here for Santa Fe. We were able to move folks right from the street into a place that met these very basic human requirements that they articulated, provided privacy, provided a clean, safe environment, and we had the services there for folks who needed them to pull their paperwork together, contact family, get into a rehab program, deal with health issues, and begin the process of moving on into permanent supportive housing or some other stable and long-term housing situation. Well, one of the things, and in some ways, because this was a departure from the work that our organization had been doing, we really wrestled with what had we learned in building the 4,000 units and about 15 different buildings, and what made those buildings work. And we realized that the key ingredients were they were well designed, they were well managed, we had 24/7 staffing, and we had the services on site that people needed to get back on their feet and make progress. And that we could take those principles and apply them to different forms of accommodation that would make that first step off the street so much more accessible for people who were otherwise just, the longer you stay on the street, your health deteriorates, you lose stuff, you're sometimes a victim of violence, you're overwhelmed with the hopelessness of it all. And just giving people that first step off the street also created, we saw, this incredibly powerful sense of motivation. All of a sudden there was something to lose, that you had actually gotten out of that desperate situation. And so I'm not surprised at all, given the qualities of Santa Fe, those statistics that Henry quoted, that so many individuals who've been living at the pilot program have made such extraordinarily promising steps. Was it 74% toward either moving into long-term housing or putting the resources and the opportunity together and securing a voucher. Now, I'll also say, well, that was our own kind of direct experience of creating a vertical micro community that was extraordinarily important and kind of jump-starting the work that we actually moved on to kind of focus on entirely, which is helping to communities to learn how to move folks off the street and really create a more robust and rapid system for that. But because we work in so many places around the country now, we get to see that this is basically a mainstream idea, and that none of, especially the larger cities that we work with, would be making the progress they're making reducing homelessness, but for the fact that they have introduced these transitional options that are decent, that are well managed, that are linked to the services people need. And in particular, I'll just point out Atlanta and Portland, and closer by than those cities, Denver, have made very significant progress, even in the last 2 years, once they introduced these, whether they call them tiny home villages or these kinds of transitional opportunities. Denver has reduced street homelessness 45% in the last 2 years since they started really making a priority the introduction of transitional housing units, including a tiny home village, some other transitional kind of purpose-built environments, plus they moved a number of people into transitional hotel situations. But it's interesting because we continue to work closely with the city that after this period, they have now housed into permanent housing, I think it's upwards of 900 individuals. And so as Henry and others have said, this is basically a way to jumpstart people's lives again, not just jumpstart the community's progress in reducing street homelessness. So there are so many examples of places that you can visit, people that you can call, neighbors who may have had some of the anxieties you might have come here tonight with, who can report on, like, this is making such a difference in our city, and it has not been the kind of, whatever people's anxieties might be, has had the kind of negative impact we might imagine. Let me just also say that, picking up on something Henry said, the basics of this idea are that it's efficient, it's fast, it offers privacy, it's a well-managed, controlled environment, and services are there. But how they are designed is really interesting. We have seen, and I think like in Newark, in New Jersey, one of the cities we work with, they're very cool. They're like shipping containers, and some of the sites are closer to the waterfront. In Atlanta, they have this new 40-unit shipping container village, which is downtown in this kind of interesting area between some different highways. In Austin, Texas, you see almost maybe 4 generations of this idea in a place called Community First Village. Everything from they have like tiny houses, and now they have like more elaborate but somewhat larger cottage houses, and they even have 3D printed houses. So this idea of tailoring some of these micro communities from a design standpoint to the aesthetic, to the style of Santa Fe is a very cool idea. I very much like the Adobe version. And so the idea of introducing, as these communities would be introduced, a uniquely Santa Fe flavor and landscaping is something that would be, I think, not only lovely for the community and those who would benefit from this opportunity of putting their lives back on track, but would be a great contribution to this growing movement to introduce this kind of transitional option as a necessary component of moving not just individuals out of homelessness, but of permanently driving reductions in homelessness. And that's really the note I'd like to end on. Santa Fe has, with 400 individuals on the by name list, of course, it's 400 too many. It's always that case in whatever city. We don't want anyone to be in this situation. However, these are not overwhelming numbers for a city your size. With the kind of thoughtful introduction of these different types of housing options with the services that people need, you could very, very, within, I'd say, like 2 years, be leading the nation in showing how a community puts the different elements together of a robust, serious, committed plan. I think it's very much in your DNA in this sense of the common good and appreciating the pride people have in your community to really lean into the fact that this is a solvable problem, meaning you can get ahead of this. There'll always be people in housing crises, but it doesn't need to result in long-term homelessness. And so I just am thrilled to be here, thrilled that this is proposed, that there's so much thoughtful work going on here to explore what would make a concept like this a unique asset and source of pride and solution finding in Santa Fe. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Roseanne. So now we're going to move to the table portion. Each table will have one facilitator who's going to be helping guide the discussion on a set of questions, and a note taker. I believe we have enough note takers for every table. If not, we may ask a volunteer from the community to help take notes. So please, on your name tags, there should be numbers. Hopefully folks can find their tables quickly and begin the discussion. So thanks everybody for bearing with us during the presentation part. And now comes the part where we get to talk.